Millions of people take off from Britain's airports every year. Almost every flight has the potential for disaster, the potential to be a terrorist target. Tonight, the fanatics who treat terrorism as theatre, aimed at a worldwide audience.
They don't mind how many people they kill because they think they're acting in the name of God.
It is all too easy for the sabotage bomber to strike.
My Flora and 258 other people with her were hurled into the screaming darkness.
We're going to have to fight dirty. We're going to have to fight the way they do to make sure we can stop this thing. If not, it's going to be horrendous.
This is Manchester Airport, reputed to be amongst the most secure in the world. Yet that cursory nod is a security check. And this, believe it or not, is another one. And that is a Cook Report bomb being loaded onto a plane. This is Ancona Airport in Italy. That's another Cook Report bomb, which will end up at Gatwick Airport in London. This container of fresh produce is going straight onto a passenger plane. It appears to have been tampered with and might contain a bomb. It should be stopped, but it isn't. In the 8 years since a terrorist blast killed everyone on board a Pan Am flight over Lockerbie, governments, airlines and airports have all promised vastly improved security. Tonight, we reveal just how little has been achieved internationally and how the prospect of another Lockerbie or worse is still a major threat.
Despite the outrage of Lockerbie, the fact that there was so much rhetoric after Lockerbie by government saying that they were going to put things right and install proper aviation security, we still have a situation where the airlines are vulnerable to the sabotage bomber.
Just how vulnerable we were soon to learn as we infiltrated undercover teams into the system. We discovered how easy it is to buy the raw materials for bombs, how easy it is to get bomb-making instructions at the press of a computer key, and how the terror stakes have soared as the bombers plan more and more spectacular outrages.
I'm saying terrorism is theater. And I'm saying it's got to be bigger than it was before. One airplane's no big deal. Got to take down 10 airplanes or a dozen.
And that's exactly what this man, Ramzi Ahmed Youssef, planned to do. Blow up 12 American jumbo jets in 48 hours.
Ramzi Youssef is the typical new terrorist, fanatical, ruthless, and extremely knowledgeable about the technology of bomb making and the vulnerabilities of the aviation system.
Youssef's terrifying plot was hatched in this apartment block in Manila in the Philippines. Later, we'll tell you the full story for the first time. Inside that giant hangar behind me, the pieces of wreckage that have so far been recovered of TWA Flight 800 are being painstakingly reassembled in the world's biggest and most macabre jigsaw puzzle. The cause of this latest disaster is still a mystery, but it brings to nearly 600 the number of people killed in the air since Lockerbie. The plane exploded and crashed into the sea shortly after takeoff from New York last July. Fragments of wreckage buried on the seabed are brought to the surface to be reassembled. The few clues that have so far emerged have sent out conflicting signals as to the cause of the disaster. But traces of explosive have been found, and a terrorist bomb is still a prime suspect. It was certainly a terrorist bomb which killed 23-year-old Flora Swire and the other 258 passengers and crew aboard Pan Am Flight 103 above Lockerbie. To test security, her father Jim later recreated the bomb, but using a confectionery mix, which looks the same as Semtex explosive to an airport X-ray machine. Security staff failed to recognize the threat.
It was a very sad occasion indeed to find that I could take that to Heathrow Airport and get on an airliner, even in spite of the fact that my case was opened and the device was handled by a security person at the airport. It was quite clear from her reaction that she had no inkling that a tape recorder of that sort might be an object of danger.
The bomb that brought down the Lockerbie flight was concealed in a bag, which was checked in by a passenger who then disappeared. He didn't travel, the bag did, with deadly consequences. Modern technology exists to prevent that happening again. Baggage tags are identified with barcodes, just like the goods at a supermarket. The bags are scanned, and a computer matches them against the list of passengers who've checked in. If there's a match, the baggage handler is told to load the bag. If there's no match, the bag should be taken off. At the boarding gate, a final scrutiny should alert staff if a checked-in passenger actually fails to board. The theory's fine, but what about the practice? Any security chain is only as strong as its weakest link. We packed a case with electrical gear and that confectionery mix, which on X-ray accurately simulates real Semtex. We checked in for an internal flight in America, where 50% of the world's air travel originates. Our bag was ticketed and put on the luggage conveyor. But when the flight was announced, we simply didn't show up. The plane nevertheless took off on time. With it, our unaccompanied bag and the mock bomb. As the plane flew at 30,000 feet from Boston to Buffalo, the passengers were unaware that our bag, with the theoretical potential to kill them all, was just a few feet below in the cargo hold. Later, we secretly filmed the bag, still unchecked, amongst the left luggage when we flew in on the next plane.
I maintain that every 747 flown by a US carrier out of the States is carrying unaccompanied, unscreened baggage. And every piece of baggage that's unaccompanied and unscreened is a major security risk. And it just amazes me that we have not lost more aircraft.
But far from tightening up security, America's internal airlines have put off even testing baggage reconciliation because they say it would cause massive disruption. To test international flights, we chose at random Ancona Airport in Italy. We booked a flight to London's Gatwick Airport via Rome. Our baggage was ticketed through to London, and we boarded the plane for the first leg of the journey. But once in Rome, the Cook Report bomber left the plane and continued his journey by train. His bag, however, which could have contained a real bomb, stayed on board the plane. As the bag emerged at Gatwick, we secretly filmed it. An isolated incident? Well, hardly.
Earlier this year at a symposium in London, the airline industry admitted to some 8,000 bags a day going unaccompanied and unscreened. I believe it's considerably more that are recorded in the industry's lost baggage systems. However, these thousands of bags per day add up to some 3 million plus per annum, and every one of these pieces of baggage is incontrovertible evidence that these mandatory international systems are not being implemented. And this means the skies are not as safe as they should be.
To check out baggage X-ray machines, we flew to Atlanta, where the very latest equipment was being demonstrated at a security exhibition. Our simulated explosive should have caused the machines to flash red. They didn't. Security experts knew we were testing their systems, but the best they could come up with was that because the X-rays couldn't penetrate its contents, including batteries, the bag would probably have been hand-searched.
You got no red because, fortunately, you're not carrying any explosives.
And no warning either. We tried another machine. Could it find our simulated Semtex? So this machine says nothing to worry about in this bag.
There is concern that the X-rays are not penetrating through there. So on this particular bag, you would have to open it because you cannot tell what's on either side of the batteries.
Shall we do that? Right, there's the batteries. So if we take this one out, have a look at this one.
Aha, because your explosive is sandwiched between parts that together you can't get the X-rays through, you would have to do a physical inspection. It's a tool for a well-trained operator to make a determination whether a bag has to be physically inspected or not.
But is the average operator going to be as good at it as you are?
I hope so.
In our experience, that's a forlorn hope. We actually put our bag with its questionable contents through X-ray machines at 9 large airports in a fortnight. Not once was the bag properly checked, and only on 3 occasions were we asked to open it. Even then, there was no search. At some airports, staff were not even watching the monitors. Following the mystery crash of TWA 800, President Clinton last week signed new security proposals, watched by relatives of victims of the crash.
We cannot make the world risk-free, but we can reduce the risks we face.
The president promised that he would ask Congress for millions of dollars to be put into security and new technology. A system's already been developed in America based on British-designed hospital body scanners, which can scan every layer of a piece of luggage, find and identify all known explosives, and give an automatic warning. Incredibly, there are only 4 machines in the whole of America. Manchester Airport here in England has 10.
When we ran your simulated explosive device through the machine, the CTX 5000 did not create an operator alert. It can discriminate very carefully between an actual explosive and an innocuous item in the bag. Now let's repack the bag using a real explosive. You'll notice the round circles are the cross-sectional image of the batteries. They're colored blue because they're made of metal. The CTX is able to also recognize a true explosive, put a red box around it, create an alarm and alert for the operator.
Jim Swire ran his own replica bomb through the machine and is convinced that had it existed before Lockerbie, his daughter's life could have been saved.
So we'll place the bag, initiate the scan sequence.
To see the actual Semtex, not only being picked up, but being labelled as military explosive by a machine where, as at this point, no humans had to intervene or undo the catches or anything on the case, is very reassuring.
Later, Dr. Swire reminded staff of the human tragedy behind their work.
That is a picture of my daughter, Flora. If she hadn't been murdered, she'd have been 24 the next day, and she was on her way to JFK to meet her boyfriend for Christmas. She rang up and she said, "Mum, do you mind if I go and see him for Christmas?" And Mum said, "No, that's what you want to do, darling, you go." And that's what she got for it. That is why, really, I've come to talk to you, because she was only one of many. The average age of the people on that plane was only 27 years. And any of you who've got children, even you can't imagine what it's like if one of your beloved children gets killed.
But how much effect will devices like the CTX machine have on the new breed of terrorist?
What's being done today is fine, but it's too little, too late. It'll stop the person who wants to kill his spouse, or it'll stop maybe his business partner. It will not catch the determined terrorists of the future. That's a different ballgame entirely.
Terrorism is theater. It's aimed at the audience rather than the victim, and it doesn't matter where the stage is, because modern communications will get that story and those pictures to 500 million people all over the world. But to get those 500 million people, it's got to be spectacular.
One such spectacular was planned here in Manila, in the Philippines. It brought the world within a wisp of smoke of the greatest aviation disaster of all time. The plan was to blow up 12 jumbo jets in 48 hours, murdering up to 4,000 innocent passengers. By a stroke of amazing good luck, that wisp of smoke was spotted by a sharp-eyed security guard coming from beneath the door of a flat in this apartment block in Manila's Malate district. That flat, number 601, was occupied by one of the world's most wanted terrorists, Ramzi Ahmed Youssef, born somewhere in the Middle East, a jackal with a dozen aliases. The smoke was coming from equipment he'd been using in the flat. The bomber had fled flat 601, leaving behind what was quite literally a kitchen sink explosives factory. All the ingredients to make an extremely powerful and volatile explosive called TATP he'd been able to buy locally.
He'd produced enough of this to completely destroy all 12 of his targets. And those targets were chosen from American airline timetables for Continental, United, and Northwest. And they were programmed into a laptop computer, which he'd also left behind, along with details of timing devices, chemical formulae, and the draft of a letter claiming responsibility for these proposed atrocities. There were even details of a plan to assassinate the Pope.
Yusuf was already wanted for masterminding the bomb attack on the World Trade Center in New York 3 years ago. 6 people were killed then, and more than 1,000 injured. He fled to Pakistan the night of that blast, and a year later turned up in Manila.
Yusuf was later arrested in Pakistan. But before he left Manila, he'd actually rehearsed his bombings twice. First, he blew up this cinema complex, luckily when it was empty, and then he placed a bomb aboard a Philippine Airlines Boeing 747. It exploded, killing 1 person and injuring another 10. Luckily, the plane was still able to land.
One of the passengers took this amateur video of the scene on board after the blast as the captain jettisoned fuel. Yusuf had boarded the plane in Manila, carrying the explosive on board. He put it under a seat, together with a crude detonator. He left the plane after the first leg of the journey. The bomb went off on the second leg of the flight to Tokyo. 35 of Yusuf's accomplices were arrested in Manila with an arsenal of guns, grenades and bombs. Yusuf was finally captured back in Pakistan and is now awaiting sentence in New York. Yusuf's background is a mystery, but tonight the Cook Report can reveal that he studied at Swansea University and graduated in electronic engineering. He then took as an alias the identity of another student, Abdul Basit, who'd studied at the neighbouring Swansea Institute, but who died during the Iraqi occupation of Kuwait. Tim Phillips was news editor of the student newspaper at the time.
Ramzi Youssef was a student at Swansea University. We have had a member of staff identify his photograph. There is some correspondence of names amongst the graduation lists that might suggest that he was here under a very similar name. And the Foreign Office have categorically confirmed that he was here at Swansea University.
A Filipino police video showed the ingredients for Yusuf's bombs, all of which were freely available locally. The same, we discovered, is true of Britain, where we bought the ingredients to make a bomb quite openly. No one queried the reasons we gave for wanting them. Instructions on bomb making are freely available on the computer network internet. At first it might look like a joke, but the contents are terrifying. There are even instructions for making nerve gas and formulae for other chemical warfare agents. No one knows who put those instructions on the internet, and it's almost impossible to remove them. But they can be read by anyone with a home PC and a subscription to the network. Although Britain's airport security is arguably the best in the world, we were once again to prove that it's only as strong as its weakest link. Manchester Airport has more of the American CTX scanning machines than any other airport in the world.
Baggage screening is only one of many security aspects that are required to run a safe operation at an airport. Here at Manchester, we believe we have the best. As it happens, we've just been voted the world's best airport.
But even the best airport can't be 100% secure. We built another bomb which would expose the fatal weakness and waited for the opportunity to prove it. Meanwhile, we discovered that you don't even have to get through airport security to pose a threat. Every day, thousands of packages are brought to the warehouses of courier firms to be flown out on passenger planes. There's no routine X-ray, and even when the sacks of parcels are sealed, they can still be opened and new packages introduced.
I've known some drivers who, having received the bags at the company, sealed with security tags, and remove the tag, place an item that they want delivered for a friend or whatever in those bags, and reseal it with another tag. I have never seen a bag being checked for the security tag number.
But we didn't even need tags. We simply walked round the depot and into the deserted sorting office. We left behind a package of simulated explosive addressed to New York. Tonight, it was delivered. Driving jobs at Heathrow and Gatwick airports are advertised every week. Agencies farm out drivers to the firms who regularly work inside the airport's secure area. Regular jobs include driving containers of fresh produce, everything from flowers to smoked salmon, between airports. Because it's fresh, it's nearly always carried on passenger planes. The containers are loaded outside the security area, driven in and placed on a conveyor belt, which goes directly to the aircraft. Any containers which have been tampered with or damaged should be rejected or hand-searched. But we secretly filmed one with a ripped covering and another with a broken plastic window as they went straight through. Either could have contained a bomb. Back at Manchester Airport, we prepare to exploit the flaw we've discovered in their security screen. All aircraft take a case of lubricating oil on board when they land. It's the work of moments to drain the oil from a couple of cans and substitute liquid explosive. Manchester is unusual in that the oil is kept outside the airport's secure area. Our undercover man posed as aircrew and was driven in by a contractor. In theory, the van has to pass through 3 security checks. At the first barrier, the security man nodded us through with scarcely a glance. At the second security gate, the van has to be parked whilst the driver and his mate go through a passenger-style X-ray in a nearby building. But as our secret camera in the van shows, a cursory look from the security man was the only check on the van itself. The third barrier was already open as we drove into the airport's secure area to select our target from the dozens of deserted and unguarded planes. We chose one with a conveyor belt already running. It was the work of moments to load the box of oil. It could have been the box with our bomb. But no one had checked, and no one would have known until too late if it had been a bomb we put on board.
You've succeeded in revealing a weakness in our security, and we can't deny that. I think above all else, it proves that the business of security, the business of securing an airport this size, is enormously complex. This airport is the same size as the average city centre. We have 15,000 people working here. We are totally dependent on a range of companies, and indeed a range of countries, to enable us to secure this airport.
She climbed on that plane unaware there was any additional risk. By the time the bomb exploded over Lockerbie, the plane had reached its cruising altitude of 31,000 feet. My Flora would have undone her safety belt at that point. She perhaps began to talk to the other people on the plane. And when the bomb exploded and the fuselage was disrupted, my Flora and 258 other people were hurled into the screaming darkness. And they fell, and no one knows what they felt. They fell 5 miles to their death.